Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this webinar from the Story War Academy. My name is Kevin Kerr. I'm the founder of Arrowhead 3 and the Story War Academy. And some of you have asked the question, Kevin, how is this Story War Academy different from what you're giving us every week in these webinars? Well, not a whole lot, with the exception that in the Story War Academy, we've got it broken up into bite-sized pieces with lots of exercises for you to do. And you've got my personal coaching. When you come to be part of the Story War Academy, I might be working with just you or just your team. It might be in person. It might be face-to-face over remote, where I'm giving you my full attention and we're helping craft your message and coach you in how to deliver it. All right, so that's the whole idea. And these lessons are all about sharing the wealth and also to get you to come into the Story War Academy. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's take a look at what we did last time. So in our last lesson, we talked about the 7 traits that trigger that old brain, okay? All of the buyer's decisions have to funnel through that, and those 7 things are the things. If you got those 7 things down in your sinews, wow, you've got a lot going for you. We talked about the importance whenever you're doing a spike to practice, practice, practice. And then we introduced you to the first of 10 spikes, which was imagine. Imagine today we're going to go through the second of 10 spikes, and that is the list spike. You'll find this interesting. List, we actually have 2 types of spikes tied to the list. We're going to cover just the word one today. Later on, we'll cover the next list spike, which is numbers. Very different animal. Very powerful, though. Okay, so as we get into this webinar, I want you to think about finding just the right word, just the right message. And whenever you start talking about getting just to the right word, that reminds me of...
It reads, "The doors of Durin, Lord of Moria, speak, friend, and enter."
What do you suppose that means?
Oh, it's quite simple. If you are a friend, you speak the password and the doors will open. Anon Nathelen, Edrochiamen. Vennas Nagothim, Asto Bev, Amen.
It's a riddle. Speak, friend, and enter. What's the Elvish word for friend?
Melon.
I love all those movies. My wife and I are, for Christmas, we got the Rivendell Lego set of over 6,000 pieces. We're still putting it together, but having lots of fun doing it. All right, so when we think about finding just the right word, I love the quote by Mark Twain. The difference between the almost right word and the right word is really a large matter. It's the difference between the lightning bug and the lightning. Yeah, isn't that cool? And in our world, most of my customers are dealing with selling complex products or complex solutions or services. And anytime we're dealing with a complex product, we tend to give too much information and we get wrapped up in the around the technical axle of our product. And anytime we do that, the customer doesn't fully appreciate our great value. And that lengthens the sales cycle, reduces the value of the product, and we end up having to discount the product quite a bit. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to remember that selling a complex solution doesn't always have to be complex. So what we do have to do is we have to take the message and really funnel it down, distill it down to this single idea. Anytime you're working with a wordplay, it's finding that single idea and then finding out how to make that one single idea stick with your buyer. Okay, the list or the word, and you'll hear me sometimes refer to it as a wordplay. So what is a wordplay? A wordplay is where you're using 1, 2, 3, or 4 different examples to illustrate the value of something. It's like piling on, okay? And to use a wordplay, to describe a wordplay, it's like these 5 things. It's like data analytics. It's like scientific research. It's like courtroom evidence. It's like personal experiences or nails in the coffin of your competition. Because the more you have, the more credible you are. All right? You probably remember the one picture or the idea of the 6 blind men and the elephant. Each one is touching a different part of the elephant and describing it in very different terms because they're all having different experiences. Well, this is what happens with bad messaging. Your customer only has one touch of the elephant, and they're describing it as a wall while someone else is grabbing a trunk and calling it a tree, or someone's grabbing the trunk and calling it a snake. So with a wordplay, what you're doing is you're helping give multiple perspectives of what that value is. It's second dimensional, it's 3-dimensional, it's 4th-dimensional. That's the beauty of a wordplay. Okay. Now, let's go to an example of a group in Michigan that were striving to protect the pensions of public workers. So what do all these things have in common? The weather, the flight path of a butterfly, a teenager's mood, and political decisions. What they all have in common is when it comes to control, you have absolutely no control over these things. They're unpredictable. So when it comes time for your pension, and whether it's there or not, who do you want to have control it? Somebody that you can predict and somebody that you can trust? Yeah, that's why pension reform is such an important issue for our state right now. One of the cool things about a wordplay is that you can take that message, that idea, such as control, and you can play with it in different ways. So in this situation, you heard me talk about how giving examples of when you want to have control. Well, you could also take it from another angle, from times when you have no control of a situation. Look how they did the messaging of the wordplay using this angle. So what do all these things have in common? The weather, the flight path of a butterfly, a teenager's mood, and political decisions. What they all have in common is when it comes to control, you have absolutely no control over these things. They're unpredictable. So when it comes time for your pension, and whether it's there or not, who do you want to have control it? Somebody that you can predict and somebody that you can trust? Yeah, that's why pension reform is such an important issue for our state right now. Okay, here's another example of a wordplay using our all-familiar oil rig safety valve. Let's assume for a moment you're trying to sell that all-familiar emergency safety valve to an oil and gas company with big offshore rigs. Your main value is reliability when it really matters. And you have a boatload of testing data, but you know that won't mean much to your buyer. So how would you make the idea of reliability when it really matters stick with your buyer? Here's how some of the actual salespeople won their story war. Our product shares a critical trait with these 4 people or things: a heart surgeon, a parachute, a matchmaker, and a suspension bridge. What do they all share? Well, when it comes to reliability, when it really matters, you want and need the best. Would you hire a heart surgeon who said, I can give you 80% of what you need for half the price? Or would you risk many lives putting in a suspension bridge that was not engineered to the highest standards? The same is true with our safety valve. It costs a little bit more, but you can be confident that no one else tests their valves to the same high pressures or extreme temperatures that we do. Just think about it. Every time you're giving an example, it's like you're hammering a nail, and it's just making that much more impact with your client. And what is it the customer's taking away? You're giving them examples, analogies, metaphors that are going to mean something to them. And chances are they're going to reuse this. So the wordplay is highly portable and highly mobile, and it's very transferable to you and your customers. Okay, now how do you create a really good wordplay? I've been doing this for several years, so a lot of it I've just got in my head. So in doing these webinars and the Story War Academy, I've had to really break it down so that I know that you can do this and repeat it by just following a few simple steps. Well, I found that there are 5 tips that my mind goes through when I am mastering or creating a wordplay. First and foremost, it's reducing the message down to the core benefit or the core pain. Either one will work, all right? Have fun trying them both. But you're really reducing it not down to a single word, but to a single idea. In this case, it might be control, reliability. Those are things that people understand and they have real world experiences with, which takes us to number 2. Brainstorm around relatable experiences. What are some things that most everybody has experienced around reliability or control? Chances are you're going to tap into a nerve, okay? Number 3, create a tagline. This is the placeholder. This is the label. This is what they're going to refer to it as, okay? So come up with a simple phrase. You should be in control of your pension, okay? Number 4, find a way to deliver it with visuals. Especially when you're giving 3 or 4 examples, being able to see them at the same time makes it sink in quicker and deeper. So you've seen us deliver it with pictures, with objects. Imagine doing this in a slide deck presentation. Could you do that? Absolutely. Could you do it on Post-it notes? I've done that several times. Could you do it without a visual? Sure. It's going to be more sticky if you have a visual, but absolutely you can do it without a visual, but try and put the visual there with it. And number 5, seek feedback. Because you want to know, hey, did this resonate with you? What do you think? How would this impact your organization? Because chances are, if you ask that question right and then shut up, chances are they're going to give you a nugget and say, oh my gosh, you have no idea what we're going through. And they're going to give you a whole bunch of information so that you can help them better. All right, so those are the 5 things that you want to do anytime you create a word play. So let's create one together. Let's start with one of my favorite clients from about 15 years ago, SAP. They were the 2nd or 3rd largest software company in the world at the time, based out of Waldorf, Germany. I've trained a lot of SAP salespeople, and they were fighting against Oracle at the time. I think they still are. And I've also done many message creation sessions with them, both in Germany and New York and whatever. And if you were to sit down, if you were a customer and the salesperson from SAP came and visited with you, chances are you would hear something like this. Unlock the potential of our comprehensive ERP suite, designed with advanced in-memory computing to optimize your cross-functional business processes through an adaptive user-centric interface and a multi-tiered deployment model. I sounded like Walter Cronkite there, didn't I? So you can see what the problem was. They came across as complex, complicated. ERP, for your interest, is Enterprise Resource Planning, and just about every large organization had SAP in it. They were the go-to organization at the time for that particular thing. Okay, so let's walk through the process using SAP as an example. So their core benefit, in this case, started as an objection. People were saying, you guys are too complex. But they found that there are some problems that are very complex. So they needed a complex solution, but was easy to use. So they found that that was one of their value proposition, complex, but easy to use. So brainstorming relatable experiences. Well, think about it. In your life, where have you used something really complicated, but it was very easy to use? For me, I don't have to go very far. I can just look around my desk and I can see a half a dozen things that fit that bill. Smartphones, a GPS, a Hey Alexa, or a Hey Google, or a Hey Siri device, or my car keys, or my credit card with a chip in it. All those things are very easy to use, but behind the scenes, very complicated. All right, creating a tagline. This is where SAP really hit it out of the park. They had a phrase, and it was just that. Complex problems require complex solutions that are easy to use. They used it very often and got many deals by using that phrase. Okay, number 4, deliver it with visuals. I'm going to use objects here on my desk for this particular one. Seeking feedback. Well, if they're talking to SAP, chances are they know that their business processes are complex and they want it to be easy. And in SAP's case, they had a feature called a dashboard, which was just like you would imagine, a dashboard where an executive could sit in their office and look at this dashboard and have control of a lot of different things that before that would have been very, very complicated to try and pull that together. Okay, so now that we've got all that there, let's see how it would play out. All right, I'm going to try this a little bit differently. Folks, I know some of you are looking at this our SAP solution, and you may be saying, this is very complex or complicated. And you know what? You're right, because complex problems require complex solutions that are easy to use. And your business processes are not easy. They're very complicated, coming from very different situations and missions and strategies. And somebody's got to help bring those together. It reminds me of, like my cell phone. It's very complex, but for me, it's very easy to use. Or the keys to my car. Once I step close to the car, it automatically unlocks for me. Or my Hey Google device that I use in my kitchen. Even my mother-in-law can use it without any issue. And then my credit card. My credit card has one of those cool chips in it so that when I get gas, I don't need to even insert it. I just swipe it. Very easy. But if you look behind the scenes on any of these technologies, it's scary complicated on how they do that. And that's what SAP gives you, a complex solution that's easy to use. And that's why 8 of the top 10 organizations and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And the proof points from there on. Okay. So now thinking about your solution, do you know what your core benefit is or your core pain? Could you reduce it down to a single idea? And can you think of relatable experiences? Chances are you've already used a lot of these things. So now we're just starting to collate them and archive them. Third, do you have a tagline that you use that, not necessarily for your company, but for this idea, a sentence that describes it very succinctly and pithy-like? And how would you deliver it? What kind of a visual? Would you use a PowerPoint deck, a object, or pictures or words? And then what kind of feedback would you seek? Would it be a simple, what do you think? Or has this ever happened to you? Or something like that. All right, so that's the challenge. Give it a shot. We want to go after the buyer's real issues and practice, practice, practice. That's most important. Otherwise, your spike's not going to come off. Spikes, these are skills that you have to practice to be ready for. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. You're learning these different spikes. Now imagine your salespeople being able to use any one of these spikes. It's a skill that you have to learn and you have to practice to get good at it. So that's why the Story War Academy. If you just come and watch the webinars all the time, yeah, that's good. You're going to learn something. But your growth only happens when you practice it. And especially when you get coaching and help from your team or an expert that's done it a few times. Okay, and next steps for you. Get on my calendar. There's my email, kevin@arrowhead3.com. I'd love to hear more about your team and what you're trying to do. I got some spots in my teaching and my coaching calendar, so I'd love to see how we could be of help to you. And if you want to know more about the Story War Academy, you can go to storywaracademy.com or arrowhead3.com. Okay, let's go to our Q&A. Now, looking at the questions that people, okay, folks, you see on the screen, there's that Q&A. If you've got a question or a scenario you want to pose, go ahead and click it and type it in. I should have told you that at the beginning. All right, first one. How do you get it down to one word? That's a challenge, getting it to one word. So I wouldn't focus on getting it to one word. I would get it to one single idea. Think about the complex but easy to use. That's 3 or 4. Complex but easy to use. 5 words, but one idea. It's more important to zero in on the idea. All of us may say that idea a little bit differently, but if you can get down to the one idea, then you can tear it apart and look at it from different angles. Next question. You sometimes use benefits and sometimes pain. Which one should we use? Which one's going to give you the most juice with your buyer? Sometimes, they're going to react to a gain. Okay, what if you could have greater control? Or what if you didn't have control? Sometimes it's going to be the pain. A lot of times the pain is a little more impactful, but have fun with it. Try it out. See which one works best for you. But here's a key. Sometimes the thing that doesn't make sense is the thing that makes the most sense. What do I mean by that? Well, it's like having a remote to your television, but not being able to use it. That doesn't make any sense. And therefore, that makes sense as a good example because you would never have any type of policy or product that would do that. Okay? So sometimes the thing that doesn't make sense makes the most sense. Okay, that'll be all for the Q&A for right now. Let's now go to our last video. So, sometimes you expect one thing and you get another. Same thing with your customer. Sometimes they expect one thing and they get another. Well, that's life. Well, that reminds me of a video.
Melissa, the whales need your help.
I love whales! Go, Melissa! Let's protect those whales!
Hey, Melissa, now the trees need you. The ice caps are in trouble. Hey, Melissa, now the rhinos need saving.
It's hard to be an eco-warrior, but it's easy to drive like one. Introducing the most fuel-efficient crossover, the Kia Niro.
Oh, come on!
You go, Melissa. I love that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being with me today, and I hope this has been helpful for you and that we can be in touch and learn more about your business so we can serve you. So Go out there, make it a great day, and be your best story.